Welcome to the Ministry Show. We're glad you could join us today. Last week, we talked about the importance of providing your volunteers with a great start with orientation training process. And today we're going to be talking about ongoing training and diving right into that.
You know, it's no secret that you and I live in a world today that is just time is of the essence, it seems like, in everything. Not enough time for fill in the blank, family, friends, work, getting people, especially your kids, to and from the taxi services, the club programs, the sports, the arts, we just have so much coming at us in our world today. How in the world do we take the time or make the time to continually invest in our volunteers and our leaders? Well, one of the simplest and easiest ways to do that is have an effective ongoing training program for you and your ministry. Once people are oriented, your time and your responsibility does not end there. We have to treat our people with respect and invest in them. You know, just like sometimes we don't have enough money at the end of the month because of paying our bills, sometimes we don't have enough time at the end of the month to continue our training of our volunteers and leaders. And it will not happen unless we have a game plan for it. So the ongoing training is one of the wisest investments that we as pastors and church leaders can make in our volunteers and other leaders. But I can promise you this, because of this time factor I just talked about, unless you have a solid why for ongoing training, you will not do it. Now, it's not because you're not motivated to do it. I think we all understand that training people is important, ongoing training is important. I'm very sure that you, like I, really appreciate those that take the time to invest in me by training me. But what happens is this tyranny of the urgent will come in and knock your training out. Have you noticed that, Pam?
Yeah.
It's just crazy because it's almost like there's fires, so to speak, not real fires, but the fires of ministry kind of flame up and they seem so important. Urgency, and especially the tyranny of the urgent, is an oppressive and cruel force against our intent. It will bump out your intent, it will knock it out, or just kill it. Urgency doesn't care about your purpose, your plans, or your perspective. Does not care. Because urgency just happens. It will cloud your purpose, it will wreck your plans, and it will absolutely destroy your perspective if you let it. You know, remember, in our country here, we go at great lengths to keep tyranny off of our shores. Well, I mean, we've got Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, CIA, secret. I mean, we have all this to keep tyranny at bay. You and I, as pastors and church leaders, need to have a very strong why in order to keep tyranny of the urgent at bay from our ongoing training. So let me give you 3 real quick whys. I really want this to anchor for you and for me so that our investment of ongoing training will reap rewards and will multiply down the road. So here's 3 whys for you to consider. You may come up with 3 or 4 better ones, but at least this will prime the pump to get you going. First of all, involvement. I want to stay involved in the lives of people, not only my leaders, but all of those people that are following me. And it's impossible at some point to do on an individual level. For me to stay involved, I need to work with and train as best I can people on an ongoing basis. The second one is awareness of what's going on in my ministry. And again, we have to face it that at some point in ministry, the number of, the amount of, and the length of time it takes to do all the tasks just eclipses our ability to do so. Well, that's where our own leadership comes into play. So we have to lead people in getting all of these things done. Well, if I, as a leader, lose touch with those that I'm leading, I can tell you this, I will absolutely spiral down. as a leader because I'm unaware, I'm out of touch, and I don't realize the joys that my people that I'm leading are having. I don't understand the sorrows that they're having. I don't maybe understand or know about the challenges that they're facing if I'm not aware. And then finally, we've used this word a lot already, the investment. If we want to return on our ministry, we have to invest first. Matter of fact, a sure sign of a leader is this: leaders invest first, and then they receive return later. If we don't invest, we can't expect a return. The best investment that you can make is quality ongoing training. And then the very next question to all of this is, how often do I meet? I hear that question probably 5 or 6 times a day as I'm coaching and helping other pastors and church leaders in our custom coaching program. Pam, how often do we meet?
It ties in, Chris, what you said about knowing your people and having a level of awareness of their lives, because you want to invest in them, but you don't want to overwhelm them as well. And so you want to make sure that you have that sweet spot so that you're training enough, but not too much. And you're aware of, I've seen some people that have trained every month, and there's a dread that comes with that. And you've always said, meet when you need to, and I agree with that. You really need to know the pulse of people that you're serving with. And then you also need to monitor and measure that participation in your trainings. Who's attending? What feedback did you get? If you're having a low attendance, then did you promote well? Are you having too many meetings? There's just a lot of variables there. We do that not to grade others, but we do that to grade ourselves, to make sure that we're being effective in what we're presenting and training and that continual training that we want to provide.
Wow. Well, let's go into some hot tips on ongoing training, and then that might help flesh this all out, because there's no one right way to do ongoing training. There's no one schedule that works for everybody. As Pam mentioned, you got to kind of monitor your own self and monitor the results that you're having in your training and adjust accordingly. But here's a couple hot tips then on ongoing training. First one is this: culture impacts your people. It is undeniable. There's a couple cultural things that are happening right now that we need to be aware of. The first one is time shifting. I'm sure you've noticed it, and you've probably done this yourself, where maybe I want to watch a television program, let's say sports. I have not watched a live sports event in at least 5 years. I record it, and then I play it back when it fits my schedule. That's an example of time shifting. Another one would be that the affluence that we have in our culture is unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented. Everyone feels entitled, not just those that are younger than you. I feel entitled. I'm 55 years old. I can remember, this dates me horribly, but it used to be that air conditioning was advertised in restaurants. Hey, we have air conditioning, come to our restaurant. What does air conditioning have to do with food? Nothing, except for you want to be comfortable. Here's how I know you're entitled and I'm entitled. I don't know when you're watching this, what time of the year, but in the summertime, this next summer, turn off the air conditioning at your church and then let me know how well that goes for you. Mm-hmm. Well, don't we feel entitled to be comfortable when we're at church, at least temperature-wise today? Or, well, I don't want to get too much into this, but you can set the temperature at any temperature you want at your church auditorium, sanctuary, and you're going to have complaints. It's too hot and it's too cold.
Yes.
It's a game of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, We all feel entitled. It's just to what level. It's very important that you understand that the culture impacts your people. So we need to learn and know, hey, what's going on in the culture, and that it's an okay thing that culture influences our people. We just need to recognize it and then act accordingly.
Yeah, and if you're offering training, just one training, that's not helpful, Chris. I've learned that over the years. You can't just have one time. For me, I found that Sunday afternoons were great because people were already at church. We provide childcare for those that needed it. Having a lunch right after was great. It worked, especially in the last church I was in. That was a great fit for that culture. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's best for every church or for every team of leaders. So know your people, have flexible times, Don't just stick to that one regiment. I don't think that's helpful for everybody.
Well, Pam, that makes me think of that, and you tied in the time shifting thing better than I did. If I only offer my training at one time, I'm going to hit just a very small fraction of my people because of this time shifting thing. But the other thing you might want to think about is, what if you could deliver your training in multiple avenues? Like, instead of just a meeting, you could record that meeting, audio or video, and have it available on, YouTube's free.
Right.
You can put it up on YouTube or whatever. And it's not that your people are unspiritual because they don't come to your deal. It's because the culture allows them to time shift everything. I do this a lot. I buy stuff online and then go pick it up at the store.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
Guess what? That means I don't have to go shopping at the store. I don't have to find the aisle that has the widget or the gidget or whatever it is. And I just buy it online. And then I get a little text right to my phone that says, oh, okay, you can come pick this up now. Yeah. And I walk in, there's no line. It's already paid for. And they go, oh, you're Mr. Mavity? Here, let me see your ID. And I show them my ID and I walk out with it. Anybody else out there that despises lines, buy it online, go pick it up, or have it delivered to you or whatever. A few more hot tips. Number one, make your training authentically yours. Make it your own. Both Pam and I beg, borrow, steal, take from everybody. But that doesn't mean that we just rehearse exactly somebody else's thoughts. We got to make the training our own. One good example of this, it ended up actually being at North Coast, one of the favorite trainings that people would ask for over and over again. Seth Godin wrote a book called The Dip. It's a book on making good decisions at good time frames. At the start of a project, there's lots of enthusiasm and all that, but then that enthusiasm wanes. That's the dip. Don't make decisions in the dip is the idea. Well, I did a training on this book. I had several other copies of the book there. I said, hey, most of the thought that I'm going to give you comes from this little book right here. It's called The Dip. You ought to get it and read it. But then it prompted my own thinking as well. I added my thoughts to it, and it ended up being one of the most popular trainings, ongoing trainings for small group leaders at North Coast.
Yeah, and I've done the same thing, Chris. The key, too, is that people need to hear from you as a leader. No one's going to be able to build into people the way you are. So like Chris says, we've all read books and taken that, and sometimes it's a one-time training, sometimes it's ongoing for a year, I've seen, on just one book. But it has your flair, your leadership. People do need to hear from you.
Yeah, let me give you another hot tip. And this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but hang with me. The tip is minimize your skill set training. In other words, don't continue to train an usher on how to ush. Don't continue to train a small group leader on how to conduct a good meeting. That's all skill set stuff that most of the time they already know. Instead, focus your training time on maximizing life skill training. How do you help them become a better them? Maybe a better spouse, a better parent, a better community member, a better decision maker, like what that book, The Dip, helped with. Another really popular training that we did was having the talk with your soon-to-be teenager, or if you're already a teenager, probably a little bit late. Having that talk with your kids, that helped parents at least become better at some aspect of being a parent. The idea here is that once you're already a usher, small group leader, nursery worker, hospitality person, or whatever, you can get incrementally better at the skill set side of it, but really we want to invest in the person. And when we invest in the person, we get a better return all the way around. Then one more hot tip, and that is continue to reference why. In all of your training, instead of trying to convince people of why with a big, long training, what I've learned that's more effective over time is to drip the why in. It's important because why is always the motivator. What is never the motivator, because what simply means more work. And I have yet to find people that want to do more work. But when we concentrate on dripping that why in every single meeting, just a reminder, just helping people understand the why side of ministry, they get super, super motivated, but it's easily forgotten.
And, incorporating those stories in your why as well. I know that when we would get finished with an ongoing training, there was an excitement amongst volunteers, and I could feel like fresh vision in them. And it's because we shared stories of how they impacted people's lives, how they impacted children and families. And
Beautiful.
it just connected their heart, and they saw the why demonstrated in those stories.
And then I know that to get people to come to a meeting, we have to promote it.
Yes.
I think you're the expert there, Pam.
Well, a little bit, yeah. I believe that communication needs to come out a lot of different ways rather than just emails. I learned early on that email that I sent out, hardly anybody read it. So think about other ways of communicating. Obviously email is great. I would even do flyers. That kind of takes me, doesn't it? But I would do flyers and hand those out. But connecting with people consistently, when you run into them, remind them. Texting. There's so many great forms of communication now, especially if you have a great church management software to do that with. Also, keep in mind, I learned this years ago, the personality styles. And I know back in the, 80s, they were doing the choleric, sanguine, melancholy, phlegmatic. There's all these different personality styles. But if I know that I have more of that choleric type personality, I would say things like, the leaders will be there. When you're a choleric personality and someone says that, they're like, I'm a leader, I'm going to be there. And then, of course, with the melancholy, I would say things like, there's going to be a lot of great detail that's really going to help and encourage you. They love details. So they respond to that. So know your personality styles.
Yeah, and then speak to it, just like what you're saying. I should have used that. Hey, this is a training that all the leaders come to.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yes.
That's brilliant. Well, listen, we've got a couple of action items for you here. First one is to just simply review the last 6 months. How much time have you spent training your people? The more important question is, how much time did you prepare in the training that you gave to your people? Was it a half an hour for an hour's meeting? That's wrong. We need to be prepared. And then results are always a great measuring stick. What percentage of your people are coming to your training? It says on here volunteers, because if you're the boss, you can force people to come to training, clearly. But what percentage of your volunteers come willingly to your training? Establish that baseline. Let's say it's 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever it is for you. We get the baseline, and then we can become better over time by putting in some of these hot tips that have been mentioned.
Next week, we're going to cover the topic of training and then what to do beyond the meeting.
Beyond the meeting. Now, I'm going to just springboard off that a little bit, because often as pastors and church leaders, we think about training as a meeting because we're academically trained. We get a lot of information through some coursework and all of that, but that's not where your people are. You're going to want to be here next week for ongoing training, but beyond the meeting. We so appreciate you being here, learning and applying this stuff. And just want to say thank you once again to our sponsors, Aware3, Catalyst Creative, North Coast Training, and Fulcrum. You can see them on the screen there. If you have interest or needs in one of those areas, just click there and they'll be happy to help you out. But until next week, God bless you. Have a great week.